And just like that, it's time for our weekly roundup of all the things Lady just ain't gonna do this week. Number 1, your former president threatens death and destruction if he's held accountable for all the dumb shit he did as president. Now, in today's episode of White People Can Get Away with Absolutely Anything, your former president, who once bragged that he could shoot someone on Fifth Avenue in the middle of the day and get away with it, is now actually threatening to do exactly that. Get somebody hurt if anyone dares to actually hold him accountable for all the dumb fuck shit he's been up to since being elected president. Oh, including paying hush money to a woman he fucked while he was married in order to keep her quiet about their rendezvous after he got elected as president. Now, any story involving this dude is just so fucking bizarre, but I just want to know, why is it that he's not already in jail? Oh, that's right. Because he's white. Other things Lady just ain't gonna do this week, well, what do you think about when you think of Waco, Texas? Now, speaking of your former president, and that's about white, let's discuss the consequences of there being no consequences for this fuck shit. Now, this week we learned that Trump is indeed announcing that he's running for president again. And he's decided that the location of that announcement is gonna be in Waco, Texas. Now, in case any of you listening right now are just too young to remember, in Waco, Texas, more than 20 years ago, a cult leader named David Koresh died in a bloody standoff with the United States government. What does David Koresh have to do with Donald Trump, you ask? Well, let's see here. Donald Trump is a type of cult leader with his followers willing to do basically anything and everything in his name. That's one similarity. Oh, the other one is that Donald Trump seems to also be in a somewhat of a standoff with the United States government, or at least threatening that he will be if anyone dares to hold him accountable for his crimes. Now, it's truly fascinating to me how far this has gotten. And not just fascinating, but dangerous. Let this have been Barack Obama. He most definitely would not have made it this far, honey. Other things Lady just ain't gonna do this week is Uganda passing a bill that criminalizes being gay with jail or with death. So in today's episode of What the Fuck, Uganda has passed a new bill that criminalizes being gay, punishable by the death penalty in certain cases. Now, it's already illegal to be gay in Uganda, but apparently that wasn't enough. This bill makes identifying as gay illegal, and it requires that community members, including family members, report anybody in a same-sex marriage to authorities. Any individual or institution that publishes, broadcasts, or promotes pro-gay media material, they also face prosecution and jail, alongside other provisions. Now, the bill has not yet been signed by the Ugandan president, Yoweri Museveni, but many expect him to. Now, the bill was condemned by officials in the United States and in the UK, with the irony being, of course, that this bill is set up under the same premises as anti-trans legislation here in the US. They say it's to protect children. Same-sex relationships are banned in about 30 African countries. Other things we ain't gonna do this week, Kemp signs Senate Bill 140 into law in Georgia, banning gender-affirming healthcare for trans youth. Now, before you go tisk-tisking about what they do in Africa, please do keep that same energy for the good old United States of America, where right here in Georgia, we deny gender-affirming healthcare to transgender youth. Just last week, Governor Brian Kemp of Georgia signed Senate Bill 140, which bans certain gender-affirming care for minors. The bill bars licensed medical professionals, of which the governor is not one, from providing patients under the age of 18 with hormone therapy or surgery related to gender transition. Now, to do so might result in revoking their medical license. Now, all of this under the guise of protecting children. Unless, of course, it's young people who want or need gender-affirming care, to which Brian Kemp says, no health care for you. I gotta move on because, y'all, my blood pressure is sky high. Okay, so let's talk about what Lady loves this week. Number 1, Kentucky governor vetoes a sweeping bill denying rights to trans people. Now, before you start running around talking about what they do in the South, let's just mark that fucking with trans people isn't a Southern thing any more than it's an African thing or any other way you might be trying to make sense of it. This, 100%, is a backlash thing from a party with what? No plan, no proposals, and no policy, remember. So let's discuss the courage of Kentucky Governor Andy Beshear, who vetoed a bill that would have banned access to gender-affirming healthcare, restricted the bathrooms they can use, banned discussion of sexual orientation and gender identity in schools, and this bill would have allowed teachers to refuse to refer to trans students by the pronouns that they use. Now, speaking of protecting children, Governor Beshear said the bill would have taken away parents' rights. Oh, you know, the actual people who are charged with caring for children. So, both the Senate and the House in Kentucky are GOP majorities, which means it's possible for them to overturn the governor's veto. However, the point remains, it's not a Southern thing or an African thing. This is a conservative thing. And really and truly, I hate to say this because not all conservatives are for this garbage. However, there really is no denying that conservatives in this country have chosen to fight the culture wars rather than proving their theory that their way of life is better by, actually making people's lives better. Other things Lady loves this week, Paris is burning, literally. Now, baby, people in France are not playing any fucking games when it comes to their pensions. More than 1 million people have joined protests to express their opposition to French President Emmanuel Macron's pension reforms, which basically would raise the retirement age for most workers from 62 to 65. Now, baby, Macron done fucked around and found out because people been lit up for the better part of the last 2 weeks over this shit. They done set off smoke bombs at the airport, sat on the tracks at a Paris rail station, left garbage in the streets for more than a week, blocked traffic near the major airport, and they even fighting the police, child. Now here's the issue underneath all this. The aging population in France, it's growing, and questions over how to pay for that are looming. So their proposal, make people work longer. Man, you really cannot make this shit up. Anyway, shout out to France. Turn up. Other news this week is the Atlanta Journal-Constitution gets its first Black editor in 150 plus years. Now, this piece of news sparked ladies' interest, and so we could not help but include it here, which is that for the first time in the paper's 155-year history, a leading newspaper in Georgia, the Atlanta Journal-Constitution, has appointed its first ever Black editor, Leroy Chapman Jr. 155 years, child. Chapman has been a journalist for 28 years, and he's been with the AJC since 2011. Congratulations, Mr. Chapman. Show us what you can do. Welcome back to Ladies Love Notes, where we give you all of the real about being newly single and dating in your 40s. Now, we've got a good one for you this week as we continue the tales of what it's like on these here dating apps as a 42-year-old woman. This one's my favorite because we're asking the question of how much is just too damn much? All right, so Lady divulged in our last episode that she has joined the world of dating apps, and as I said prior, it is a fascinating experience. We've covered some of the basics in terms of the ins and outs of the apps, and where we left off was me telling you that I was finna give it a shot, which I am and I have. I've been meeting some people, going out on dates, and truth be told, it's been a minute since I've been on a date, honey, so we rusty. But in this new nation of I now go on dates, I present a most humbling dilemma that is quite new for me if I'm keeping it 100%. So let's dive in. All right, y'all. So I meet this man one afternoon as I'm scrolling. He looks good. We have some similar interests, and so we start chatting. Off jump, he's funny, he's engaging, and this is a plus because really and truly, these men will how is your day you the fuck to death. Now that's an episode for another time, but suffice it to say, some people have a hard time getting a meaningful sentence out. That's dating app life. In any case, after a few days of chatting, I'm like, all right, this guy's interesting. He likes to cook. He says he's good with his hands. He works a regular corporate job. I don't care. And has interesting things to say about himself and life. He asks me good questions. I like that he flirts, but it's not over the top, normal shit. So we exchange numbers and we start chatting that way. And eventually we decide we're going to meet up in person. Now, leading up to the date, I'm going back to his profile and our chat, and I'm looking for the red flags. Now, nothing jumps out at me right away, so I'm like, oh, good. And in any case, we agree to meet for a drink at a local watering hole. Now, I figure we can have a drink, and I'll see if I like it. If there's no there, then I can leave, and there's no pressure. I'm not stuck in a dinner, in a movie. I can get out. So the night comes, and we link up. And I get there first, which is shocking, because really, I'd be running 5 minutes late like most of my life. He shows up shortly after me, and honey, he is fine, like better looking than his pic. I'm like, okay. So we order a drink and we get to talking. And he seems a little bit nervous, but I am too. And soon after, though, the conversation seems to flow nicely. And eventually we're laughing and we're talking and all the things. He tells me I'm pretty, which I find endearing, and he definitely is looking good to me. I mean, we're attracted to each other and it shows. I decide to stay for another drink. Now, the night goes on, and it's definitely getting more and more flirty. Now, I can tell it's on if I want it to be, and seriously, I'm considering it. Long story short, we decide to end the night together. Before I get into the rest of the story, I do want to say how important consent is, okay? I did not feel pressured or too intoxicated to say yes, and I honestly felt like he was paying attention to all that. Now, it seems like a small thing in this world of what the fuck, but it's actually huge, even though it shouldn't be shocking. Anywho, I just needed to say that. And yeah, we get back to the house and instantly we start getting down to business. We had things to do. And this is when I learned that this man is a straight up freak. And I'm totally here for it. I mean, he's down for all kinds of shit. And I'm enjoying this because truth be told, some of these dudes out here just talk a big game, but they really can't deliver. But honey, he is delivering and I am delivered. And he proceeds to deliver for the better part of 3 hours before I have to tap out and say, mercy. 3 hours. 3. Around 5 a.m., I say, sir, I am indeed embarrassed to admit this, but I'm tapped out and I actually need to go to bed. Now, usually my appetite is stronger than that of my counterpart. Ever since I turned 40, I swear to God, it's only increased. Now, I once came 22 times in a night. I'm not bragging, I'm just saying I have stamina. But this man met me and taught me literally and figuratively. Now, to his bewilderment, I walked his ass out at 5 a.m. And as I sat on my porch in my own bewilderment, I wondered, how much is too damn much? Now, I had the same question on my mind when I awoke the next day, or that same day, just a couple hours later, so I took my question to the trusted group chat and I let the conversation commence. Now, seemingly, I had found the pot of gold at the end of the rainbow, and yet, why did I feel like I'd just taken the bar exam without ever having attended law school? Child, the responses I received were absolutely hilarious. One of my girls said she had a similar experience, and then she just ended up ghosting the dude. Another one said her sleep was too damn important. After 2 hours, it's basically just masturbation at that point, she said. I was laughing. As I sat up in the bathtub recovering from my real-life rendition of the Freaky Tales, I mean, look, I had hickeys and shit. It was crazy. I recalled the episode where Samantha met a man with a huge penis, and after many attempts to conquer the mountain, she conceded defeat. She tried every which way, every other thing, and she was determined to prevail, and Samantha was a freak. This man was not Mount Everest in the same way. I mean, he was average, and I've definitely dealt with bigger. But baby, never have I ever tapped out like that. But also, never have I ever fucked for 3 hours straight with no water, no breaks, no dozing off. And the only time I have straight up walked somebody the fuck out my bed and out my house was in fact when the sex was so bad, I just could not take it anymore. This child did not know what they were doing. Okay. So let me ask you, dear listeners, how much is just too damn much? I mean, have you ever encountered such a phenomenon? And if so, what did you do? How'd you handle it? I mean, is there like a special training program or something? I need to know. Sound off. Send your experiences to my grab bag so you and I can learn together.